and your life.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the July 6th, 2021 Board of Directors meeting,
Your life.
East Bay Regional Park District. And today is, like I said, July 6th, and it is 1:03. And at this time, I would like to ask our Madam Clerk, Yolanda, to take a roll call.
Yes, good afternoon, Director Rosario. Director Lane. Here. Director Wieskamp.
Here.
Director Eccles.
Here.
Director Coffey.
Here.
Director Waspy.
Here.
Director Corbett.
Here.
And President Rosario.
Here.
Staff present are General Manager Landry, Deputy General Manager Alvarez, District Council Victor, AGMs Ocker, Johnson, O'Connor, and Acting AGM Michael Reeves, Uchiobaro, and Eric Fuller.
Great, thank you. We are meeting pursuant to Governor Newsom's executive order number N2920 and the Alameda Health County Officers Shelter in Place orders. And that allows the Board of Directors and staff to participate in board meetings via phone and video meetings. And members of the public can listen and view the meeting in the following way, and I will ask Yolanda, Madam Clerk, to tell you the different ways that you can participate in this meeting today.
Yes, President Rosario, I don't know if that's your volume that's having the issue.
I don't know, let's see.
Okay, yes it is. No, it's not. So,
Director Waspy, check Director Waspy.
Matthew and Sharon, if you guys could manage that sound, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So public comments can be submitted in one of three ways, actually, via email to myself, ybknight, yburial@evparks.org, via voicemail at 510-544-2016, or simply come into the meeting and leave your comment with us. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any public comments not on the agenda?
Yes, President Rosario, we have 3, and let me just do a quick check to make sure that they're all here. Please don't unmute your video until I call on your name. And Joseph Sutton.
Good afternoon. This is Joseph Sutton, and I am present.
Are you planning to speak?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, this is your time. You have 3 minutes, sir. You can
Excellent.
unmute your video. Excuse me, unstop your video. If you'd like, you don't have to.
There we go.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to address the board. As your colleague mentioned, my name is Joseph Sutton. I'm a workers' rights attorney in Oakland. I'm a full-time Berkeley resident since 2008. I'm also the father of 3 active kids between the ages of 10 and 13, and my family and I have very much appreciated living close to Tilden and Wildcat Canyon. My oldest son participated in the East Bay Regional Parks Junior Ranger Program. So we've used the park in that capacity, and we also are active hikers, campers, and mountain bikers, and have used the park for that system. I'm here today to advocate for those of us who use East Bay Regional Parks, in particular Tilden and Wildcat Canyon, for mountain biking, and specifically to advocate for the creation of additional mountain biking trails in the form of single track trails, and also for greater access to existing trails that are currently off limits to mountain bikers. So on that first point, the creation of more single track trails, currently the single track trails in Wildcat Canyon and Tilden are pretty limited, about 2 miles. And this means that mountain bikers such as myself and the kids I coach on the El Cerrito Junior mountain bike team have a very limited single track to ride on. So we ride those trails over and over again. We really appreciate the single track that's open to mountain bikers at Crockett, but we also believe that there is additional space for building additional single track in Wildcat Canyon and in the Tilden areas. And to the extent that there's been any friction between hikers and mountain bikers in those areas, I think creating additional single track would help alleviate some of that by getting mountain bikers out onto some additional trails. My second point that I'd like to advocate for is just greater access to the existing single track trails in Tilden and Wildcat Canyon. I think as someone who uses the trails in Wildcat and Tilden regularly, I think that hikers and bikers can really coexist and share these trails. As a coach, coaching kids, we emphasize to our student riders to slow down when we approach hikers and say hello to encourage a respectful relationship. And I think that it's possible if East Bay Regional Parks opened some of the existing trails that are not open to mountain bikers currently, so that hikers and bikers could use them, that we can really coexist peacefully together. And if I'm not out of time, I'd like to just also add that as a coach of 6th to 8th graders on the El Cerrito mountain biking team, we'd really like the opportunity to do some trail maintenance in Tilden and in Wildcat Canyon. My son is a junior ranger for the East Bay Regional Parks District, has had that opportunity with the rangers in the park in Tilden to do that. And I think it's been really beneficial for him. And I think also if hikers see mountain bikers, including kids who mountain bike out working on trails, that it could really, again, reinforce this coexistence of hikers and mountain bikers, and let everyone know that we appreciate the park and are there to coexist with our fellow hikers. So I have a feeling I'm out of time, but I appreciate the board indulging my comments today.
Yes, you had like 10 seconds, so you did good, Mr. Sutton, so thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mateo Diaco. Mateo, if you can unmute yourself,
Yes.
and you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank
Okay.
you. Mhm.
My name is Mateo Diaco. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I go to Korematsu Middle School and I'm 13 years old. I'm one of 60 members of the Wildcat Composite Middle School mountain bike team. I'm near my 3rd year on the team. I love mountain biking because I always have something to do when I am bored. I also enjoy the thrill and community of this great sport. I ride at Wildcat Canyon and Tilden Park several times a week because they are the closest parks to our location and I can easily bike from my house to these parks. When on the trails, we always put the hiker's safety in front of our own. We slow down and always call out respectfully. We always show hikers more kindness than they give to us. If by mistake we startle them, we always stop and apologize. Even after I do all of this, more than once I have been yelled at by hikers who just don't like to share the trails with us. It makes me sad and angry because our team really does everything it can to be respectful and share the trails. We all love these trails, and even though hikers and us are very different, one huge similarity is that we do our activities purely just to have a good time and have fun. So why can't we have fun together and just respect one another? If it weren't for mountain biking, I wouldn't be enjoying the East Bay Parks as much as I do now. In fact, I can tell you most of my biking friends either. It has been amazing discovering new wild areas that I would not have gone to otherwise. We are your future users, and mountain biking is what we love to do. With this speech, I'm asking that you open or build more trails for mountain biking, especially single track trails in Tilden and Wildcat Canyon. Single track trails allow us to get more thrill out of our riding than just the old boring fire roads. I would also like to be able to volunteer for trail maintenance in these parks, like our team does at China Camp State Park. My team and I use Tilden and Wildcat Canyon a lot. It is not fair that only hikers get to enjoy them fully. You must find a way to give everyone fair access to be able to enjoy these parks that are close to us. Since I started mountain biking, our team has more than doubled in size, and it will continue to grow. This is why I asked you to consider the needs of this mountain bike community, because we are not going to disappear and we are going to keep growing. We will always respect hikers, and I hope they find a way to respect us and our love for these parks too. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Matea. Our next speaker is Darren Hendrickson Sperry.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today and for all the work you have done with the parks. My name is Darren Hendrickson Sperry. I'm 12 years old and I go to Willard Middle School in Berkeley. I am one of the more than 60 members of the Wildcat Composite Middle School mountain bike team. This is my second year on the team. I love to ride mountain bikes. Learning new bike skills and life skills from my coaches and friends on team rides is one of the highlights of my week every week. I ride in Tilden and Wildcat Canyon around 4 times a week, and these parks are the only ones that we have time to get to during the week. Because we ride there so often, I often have to ride the same trails over and over. I respect hikers and always slow down and greet them when passing. Our coaches always have us stay on legal trails and try to do my best to preserve the natural environment of the parks. Tilden and Wildcat Canyon have become very crowded this year with more hikers and a lot more mountain bikers like me. It has become hard sharing trails with hikers because some of the hikers get angry at us even though we follow the rules. This seems to be happening more and more, and it makes me feel like mountain bikers are being treated badly just because they want to have fun safely. I really enjoy mountain biking on narrow trails, but there are only about 2 miles of single track trails open to mountain biking in Tilden and Wildcat. Hikers and horses get access to many single track trails, so I don't get why bikers don't. I would really love it if there were more single track trails built or opened. There have been trails being built in Crockett for bikers, and I love to ride there, but I can't drive there myself and just don't have the time to get there for weekday practices. I got into mountain biking late last year, and it was amazing to make new friends and meet new people through the team, as well as learn how to mountain bike. I used to ride on the Woodmont Gap Jumps, a small bike park built in the Berkeley Hills by some high schoolers, but sadly it was torn down, taking away another opportunity for places for me to ride. Our team helps maintain trails in China Camp, and I would really love to work on trails in Wildcat and Tilden, where I spend a majority of my time riding. Why are there no opportunities for this? I want to thank the EBRPD for staying open during the COVID pandemic. Many other parks were closed, and it really provided a great outlet for me and my team. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Darren. Our next speaker is Cordis Cooper. I think, there you go. You didn't send an email, so I'm assuming you were coming in on a public comment, so.
Yes, I actually hadn't planned on saying anything today, but
Okay,
I'll go ahead and give my 2 cents as well.
okay,
I'm the head coach of the
you have 3 minutes, sir.
Wildcat Composite team. And yeah, you've already heard from several of our members. You know, we've grown, I guess, about a factor of 8 over the last 8 years, and will continue to grow, I think, for the foreseeable future. As I think you've seen, we've got a bunch of kids who really enjoy this sport. And, you know, we've been just tickled pink to see them out there every day, working hard, staying off the screens, you know, enjoying the parks. And I think, you know, they're your next generation of constituents. And getting them on mountain bikes is a way to get them into the parks on a regular basis. I think most of these kids just simply wouldn't be going out there if it weren't for the excitement of mountain biking and the pleasure it brings to them. So as I said, you know, the single tracks are much more fun for the kids. In fact, the fire roads, when we look back at our accident statistics, they're the main cause of accidents. They simply encourage the kids to go too fast, and as a result, they get hurt. So single tracks are definitely a safer way for them to go. And in any event, I also want to close by again thanking the parks for staying open during this period. It was very frustrating to see many of the other parks close at the time when the need was greatest, but you all kept the parks open, and for that we are greatly appreciative. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Our next speaker is Keita Price. Ms. Price.
Yes.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Cool.
Mhm.
Good afternoon, everybody. How y'all doing? So with it, Keita Price here, third generation East Oakland native, also Director of Urban and Regional Planning for the East Oakland Collective, a local grassroots group that does racial and economic justice for DP East Oakland residents. And we do that in 4 areas: economic empowerment, neighborhood transportation and planning, homelessness service and solutions, and civic engagement. And so, yes, I'm really just here today to introduce myself and to just let you all know that myself as a resident, EOC, and many other East Oakland stakeholders, such as the Black Cultural Zone, such as CBE, Communities for a Better Environment, Higher Ground, and other folks and partners, we're here we want to start being more present to start advocating more for the East Bay Regional Park District park that we like, which is the Martin Luther King Jr. Shoreline. It's the most accessible park to our area. We feel like the city of Oakland and East Bay Regional Park District don't work enough together to really highlight that area for East Oakland residents. So even though it's only about 5-10 minutes from me, depending on the mode that you use, yes, it's unmaintained. I'm not gonna say it's unmaintained. You all actually do a good job at maintaining it. It's just, it has way more potential, and the access of who have access to it and the different type of cultural amenities available to it, varies and doesn't seem to be very friendly or I guess slated to BIPOC communities such as myself. I grew up going to Martin Luther King Jr. Shoreline, to the Shoreline Center, having my family reunions there. And then we ended up going to the Turn site. And then after a while, people just thought that the site was boring. We had to bring everything to the site to do. We used to play baseball, volleyball. But after a while, it was easier to just go to a park way in Hayward, which is not easier to me because I don't have a car. But to everybody else, it's easier to go to the park with the baseball field, with the courts and the playground and everything like that. So it's been my mission in getting into EOC and activating a lot of our East Oakland stakeholders to really reclaim Martin Luther King Jr. Shoreline and reclaim and restore. I'm also part of the Oakland Shoreline Leadership Academy with the West Oakland Indicators, Environmental Indicators Project, to help create a plan of, again, shoreline engagement and projects that we can see to help restore and reactivate the shoreline. So I just really want to introduce myself. You'll be seeing more of me and some of my partners over time to come and talk about our different priorities in terms of reclaiming for recreation, the physical access of getting there, and then the actual restoration of the climate issues that's there. And I just want to give a brief shout out to a lot of the East Bay Regional Parks District staff that's been meeting with EOC. We formally met about 3 months ago, been meeting bi-weekly to talk about what I'm talking about now. Just want to bring it to the board. So yeah, shout out to Katie, Lisa, Mona, everybody. I'm missing a bunch of names here, but thank you everybody that's been meeting with us so far. And we have an event coming up July 31st, Untold Stories of East Oakland Black Elders. That's gonna be at I forgot the name of the site, but next to the Shoreline Center. And so, yeah, just stay tuned for more events, and just want to introduce myself again as a resident, lifelong lover of the MLK Jr. Shoreline and the Director of Urban and Regional Planning for East Oakland Collective, to let you know that we're here and we're, awake and want to help you all revitalize, restore, and help us reclaim the shoreline for our quality of life, because the lake is just too far. Thank you.
Thank you, Keita.
Can I just say, so nice to have you here, Keita. Thank you so much for being here today. Look forward to talking to you some more.
Hey.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kelly Abreu. Kelly, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Well, okay. So several speakers today. We're thanking the board of directors for keeping the parks open during the pandemic. Well, if we're gonna be doing that, then the city of Fremont deserves to be excoriated for its politically motivated shutdown of Mission Peak. That happened for a month and a half last year. The city ignored the advice of public health officers while the park district was in constant contact with local public health officers and epidemiologists. The absence of, we're also hearing a lot about bike issues at Tilden. Tilden is right next to a University of California campus. The absence of any scientific survey data to quantify bikers, hikers, and equestrians has led to the failure of adaptive management. That kind of data that needs to be solid and scientific. You're going to see that later today, produced to you, given to you by UC Davis researchers in the form of a community engagement survey. The bikers are being underserved, evidently, while equestrians are being catered to. The absence of single track trails, they're not being built. I guess the machine that carves out the trail nowadays is like a 5 or 6 or 4 foot wide machine. That's the narrowest trail this park district knows how to build. Adaptive management must be data driven, and it has to look at the numbers of bicyclists and then show how you are working to match your facilities to the needs of your users. And that's not happening. People just wave their hands and say, oh, I need more service, or I'm whatever. Bikers need to be quantified. Also on a different topic, land acquisition. We've heard that the park district is looking at the N3 Ranch. It turns out the N3 Ranch has 17,000 acres in Alameda County. Park district on its list of properties under consideration has 600 acres of that under consideration. 600 out of 17,000. That tells you how much is being considered about the N3 Ranch in reality. And then Mission Peak has over 2,000 acres of city-owned land. Only 900 of them are under negotiation. So the amount of land out there is vast, and the amount that's being considered is actually quite small. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abreu. And that is our last public commenter. Let me just do a quick scan and see, make sure I'm not missing any hands raised. So that's it. President Rosario, in terms of public comments.
Great, thank you. Always nice to hear from our community, and I especially like to welcome Kita. And it's always good to know that we're trying to and continuing to outreach to our communities. So I appreciate everyone's comments. And so with that, get back on script here. And we are now at item C, and a special update. And I invite the general manager, General Manager Sabrina Landreth.
Thank you, President Rosario. I'm actually going to go ahead and turn this over to Carol Victor, the District Council, to present this item.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board President Rosario, members of the board. Carol Victor, District Council. We're before you today on adopting a resolution to terminate the local East Bay Regional Park District emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a milestone moment for the Park District. We've had 15 months of operating in a state of emergency. On March 19th, 2020, the board adopted a state of emergency, a declaration of a state of emergency in the East Bay Regional Park District, finding that there were conditions of extreme peril and beyond the resources of the Park District to handle alone. This, on the same day, Governor Newsom issued a statewide stay-at-home order. And just a few days earlier, the 6 Bay Area counties had declared a state of emergency and ordered all individuals living in these specific counties to shelter in place. So it was quite a dramatic, 15 months ago, it was quite a dramatic March. The board has readopted that emergency declaration approximately every 60 days. The last time the board affirmed the existence of emergency was on April 6, 2021. As the board's aware, on June 15th, 2021, Governor Newsom stated that California was safe to reopen, and with common sense protective measures in place, such as masking and vaccinations. Essentially, as of June 15th, all pre-pandemic activities can reoccur. We're bringing this to you before you, not that the pandemic is over, but it is within the means and power of the East Bay Regional Park District to manage within its own, but on its own and with our normal operations and our normal operating procedures. Our EOC, Emergencies Operations Center, was activated at the time that the emergency was declared. That Emergency Operations Center was comprised of representatives from all divisions, including a board liaison. Director Corbett was the board liaison on the Emergency Operations Center. They met 117 times over the last 15 months to basically make decisions, help make decisions, make sure we had capacity. We were doing COVID-19 inspections. We had the PPE that our employees needed, and that any resources that were needed could be discussed in that Emergency Operations Center. They had their final meeting on June 16th, 2021, with an acknowledgement across the team that the activation of the Emergency Operations Center was no longer needed. So with that, we are bringing forward the resolution before the board to terminate the local emergency. And it is a milestone because as everyone knows, Park District is approaching more normal operations. We've reopened our visitor centers, the swim facilities. There's a return to in-person recreational and interpretive programming. We're resuming facility rentals for members of the public, and we're transitioning remotely working staff back to in-person work.
Great. Comments or questions from the board? Director Waspy.
I would just like to make move the resolution, please.
Great. Any other?
I'll add a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there room for discussion here? Director Corbett.
Yes, I just want to take a couple of minutes, and I hope at some point we have an opportunity to celebrate and thank more officially the amazing work that was done by our staff during these very challenging times, and the work of all of the members of the EOC. I thank the board for allowing me to sit as the board representative, but I just want to let you know that so much was done. I think the Park District was a shining model of how to deal with COVID challenges in a very effective way. Everything from making sure that we had the appropriate equipment, safety equipment, the communications out to our user public, the contact tracing that was done to keep employees safe, the liaison work done with the 2 public health agencies. I could go on and on. Dealing with, the various rules and regulations and planning for what could be opened and what wasn't opened. Dealing politely and nicely with wonderful people who had reserved facilities and letting them know things like, I'm sorry, you can't have your wedding this year, those sorts of things. Our staff really shone through this. They just were shining through this very difficult time. And I could go on and on, but I just want to let you all know that the work was exemplary. And I just want to thank them too for everything that was done. This was everybody from the deputy GM and then the new GM who was there at every meeting, the leadership of the AGM of public safety, chiefs, command staff, other AGMs, staff members, communication folks, people who stepped in when some people weren't available to take their parts, the liaisons, like I said, just amazing, amazing work. And I hope we have a chance to have some kind of big celebration and thank them, hopefully in person soon, for the amazing work that was done to keep this park district going and keep our employees safe and our visitors safe. It was truly remarkable. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And any other comments? I'd like to make a comment as well. I just wanted to also highlight another component of our emergency declaration was that the formation of the COVID-19 Labor Task Force. It was a 15-member task force that incorporated management, the board of directors, both unions, the Police Officers Association and AFSCME 2428. And they met well over 30 had well over 30 meetings and averaged about 45 hours all told. And I personally feel that I really want to congratulate everyone that participated in that committee. And I think we had, you really should be proud of the work that you did there. And 152 or so action items completed. And I really think it really helped the Park District maneuver itself to keeping the our exposures to very, very, very low numbers, and being able to keep our parks open and resolving issues of safety and ongoing concerns regarding working around the public and keeping our parks open. I think just the spirit of transparency in the decision-making there was unprecedented in my time with the Park District. And I want to congratulate the leadership there of Dr. Ana Alvarez and AGM Jim O'Connor. That it wasn't an easy road task to do, but we all did it, and really pleased with the outcome. So to all the members of the EOC, to the EOC and the COVID task force, I just wanted to congratulate you all and thank you from my heart for the work that was done. So we have a motion and a second to approve the.
Second. Oh, someone already did that. Never mind.
Yes, we have a motion and a second. And if we could take a roll call, please.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Corbett?
Aye.
Director Waspy?
Aye.
Director Coffey?
Aye.
Director Eccles?
Aye.
Director Wieskamp?
Aye.
Director Lane?
Aye.
And President Rosario.
Aye.
It's unanimous approval of this resolution.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And then any other questions regarding the update? Resolution is passed. Therefore, we can now go to the item D, business before the board, the consent calendar. And I am told that item L or item J is being pulled.
Yes.
So were there any questions unasked or unanswered?
There were several questions asked by the President Rosario, and it appears that they've been all responded to.
Yes.
And so their Director Lane had questions regarding, she had two questions that I believe Brian Holt is going to respond to. And Eileen Teely already responded to you on email, but I don't know if you've seen those. And I'm not sure exactly what item it was for. Director Lane.
Both of these, well, one is just an update on what fires we were in recently, and the other was dealing with other government jurisdictions. So neither of them have anything to do with consent.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, thank you for that clarification. And so those are the only questions that I received in advance, but perhaps the board has something that's jumping out at them now.
Questions from the board? Looks like Director Waspy.
Yeah, if I may, just a question on item N.
N is in Nancy?
Correct.
Okay. And then we also have one public comment on, not public, one comment on item M as in Mary from Bruce Byer.
Okay. Let's hear the public comment on item M.
Bruce? Okay. Oh, there you go.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So I have an opportunity to comment on a consent calendar item before its adoption. Is that?
Yes.
Oh, so I didn't realize that. Okay. Well, I just wanted to assure you that TRAC fully supports the staff's proposal to have the district enter into a cooperative funding agreement with the city of Richmond to bid and build the entire 2.5 miles of Point Malati Bay Trail from the Richmond San Rafael Bridge through the Winehaven Historic District. It's going to be a great project, and it's really wonderful the district and the city are partnering on this. It's going to be an incredibly popular trail. It's so scenic and so historic there. There's a lot to see and a lot to learn. It's also going to be very popular because of its proximity. Actually, the trailhead is right next to the Richmond San Rafael Bridge Trail, where there have been over 150,000 bicycle and pedestrian trips since the bridge trail opened in mid-November 2019. So this is a great project. The Track Trails for Richmond Action Committee is really delighted to see the district and the city partnering to complete this. It's going to be a real gem, and I'm looking forward to the ribbon cutting ceremony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, it's a great opportunity. Okay, Director Waspy, your item N as in Nora.
Thank you. And item N concerns the authorization to execute a contract for youth employment services with the California Conservation Corps. And I fully support this, and I'm very happy that we're finally getting to this. I guess my question would be, it's an $89,640 contract. What do we get for that? I think I love the fact that we can get folks out helping with some of the vegetation management stuff that we're doing. I'm just wondering how far that will go, and is there a long list of parks where they'll be working, or well, just how long are they going to work and where? If you could tell me.
Director Rosario, thank you for the question, and of course, thanks for the board's support with this additional labor to help park staff with weed abatement and vegetation management. That $89,000 will get us about 10 weeks of crew time, and that crew time will be distributed through all of the 6 units that we operate in the Park Operations Department. If you have any more detailed questions, I see that our Chief of Park Operations, Steve Castile, is also on the call.
Well, no, that's okay. I'll talk offline. Obviously, I'm wondering about the 10 Hills Trail in Lake Chabot, but I'll get back to you later.
Okay, sounds great.
Great. Any last chance for any other questions on the consent item?
I'm glad to make the motion when the time comes.
Okay, looks like it is time.
I'll
I make
second.
the motion to accept the consent calendar. Thank you.
Motion from Director Corbett and a second from Director Lane.
President Rosario, just for clarification, we are approving the consent calendar with the removal of item J.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Thank you.
All items except J.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, Director Corbett moved it, and who's second?
Director Lane.
Director Lane. Thank you.
And a roll call vote is in order.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Coffey?
Aye.
Director Waspy?
Is he nodding his head?
Yeah, I see him. Yeah, he's raising his hands. Director Coffey, Director Waspy, Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Lane,
Yes.
Director Corbett.
Aye.
Who did I miss? Director Eccles. You're right in the middle too. Director Eccles and President Rosario.
Aye.
Thank you. Unanimous approval.
Great. That brings us to item number 2, Finance and Management Services Division. And let's see, I have a script. Okay, so this is the, this will include a public hearing. It's the approval of engineer's report for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Adopt a resolution confirming diagram and assessment, order maintenance, improvements, and levy annual assessments for Alameda County and Contra Costa County Regional Trails Landscaping and Lighting Assessment District Number 1, including Zone of Benefit 1, 5 Canyons, Zone of Benefit number 2, which is Dublin Hills, Zone of Benefit number 3, Walpert Ridge, Zone of Benefit number 4, San Ramon Hills, Zone of Benefit number 5, which is Stone Valley, and Zone of Benefit number 6, Sibley Volcanic. And I introduced Deborah Spalding.
Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me all right. So before we have the public hearing, I'm going to do a presentation for you. Let me share my screen. And this is just an overview of the information that's in the engineer's report. And then we can take questions and then have the public hearing. Can I go to the screen all right? Good, all right. So today's actions for this 2-county LLD are first to receive any public comments, if there are any, regarding the engineer's report, and to approve the engineer's report for fiscal year 2021-22. You're then going to adopt 2 resolutions, one of which is confirming the diagram and the assessment as set forth in the engineer's report, and ordering the maintenance and improvements and levying the assessment. And then you're going to adopt a second resolution that is overruling protests, and that's as required by state law. So some history of this 2-county LLD. It was established back in 1993, and the amount has not changed since it was begun in 1993. So it's $5.44 for single family parcels and $2.72 for multi-units. When Proposition 218 was passed, that required it to go to an actual vote, and it was reaffirmed in 1996. So this 2-county lighting and landscaping assessment district is assessed throughout the 2 counties with the exception of Murray Township, which is in eastern Alameda County, and the Liberty Union High School District in eastern Contra Costa County, where they have a $0 assessment. Public utilities are and church properties are exempt, and then senior citizens with an annual income below the poverty level are entitled to a 50% discount on the assessment, and that's called the Senior Discount Program. The funds are used to maintain, improve, and service parklands, including developed paved and unpaved trails located within the district parks, regional trails that are on the district's current master plan map, vault toilets. And we use this funding for almost 35 FTE, including roads and trails crew, Alameda County Trails crew, and the Contra Costa Trails crew. So here is a map, it's a little bit small, of the entire 2-county trail assessment district. And here is a listing from our website of all of the trails that have been designated as regional trails. And this list grows every time I go onto the website and look at it. So that's impressive. Also part of this LLD are 6 zones of benefits. And these were all created in the late 90s and early 2000s. And the formation of them was all tied to mitigation for different housing developments. I have a map a little bit later that'll show that. So there were parklands and trails that were dedicated in each of these zones of benefit that are to be maintained by the park district. And interestingly, these zones of benefit do provide for a CPI adjustment, which this year was 2%. So here's a map that shows where they are. They're quite small. And there's another slide later that shows how many parcels. Here it is. So I won't read these all through to you, but so each zone of benefit has a certain number of parcels within it, and the dollar amount that's paid increases each year by the CPI. And this detail is all in the engineer's report. And then I'm just going to go a little bit more into detail into just 2 of the zones of benefit. So Walpert Ridge is one of these. So it was established to provide funds to manage the Bailey Ranch dedication. The Stone Brae development was annexed into the Walpert Ridge zone of benefit, and then additional open space was acquired. Access to the Ukrainia, if I'm saying that right, site is via public access easement across one of the Stone Brae parcels, and the Bay Area Ridge Trail also passes through this site. And then Sibley Volcanic Zone of Benefit is 2 areas. There's the 250-acre Texas parcel, which was formerly part of the McCosker Ranch, and I believe it's named that because it sort of looks like Texas. It's donated in 2010. Zone of Benefit was established for maintaining the improvement in this Western Hills open space and the McCosker parcel. So some more recent information, the Western Hills donation is at this point expected to happen in late 2022 or early 2023. And this is a quote from an email I received earlier today from the project manager, that there were some delays in constructing the staging area, but they think they're about to begin. And the trail alignment had to be rerouted due to newly identified sensitive resources, but our trails team was able to find alternative alignment. And the hope is that the developer can construct this year. So you may feel like you've heard some of this information before. That's because this item comes to you 3 times during the year. So you've heard it twice already, and this is the 3rd and last time. So you're in July. Starts out in April, comes to the board twice. The clerk publishes a notice of public hearing in the local newspaper, and then today we're going to have that public hearing. Then it'll go to the county auditor controller's office, and then it'll be printed on the tax bills later on in September. We do have some special projects that will be undertaken in the zones of benefit this year. Some of it's just purchasing equipment, but we do have some projects, including at Walpert Ridge, the improved Canyon Rim Trail, which we have a little bit more information on here. So there's a yellow line that shows where that Canyon Rim Trail is. And so it's a 1.6 mile multi-use trail connecting Llama Lane to the main part of Guerin Park. Here's a summary of the funds that we receive, or that we will receive over the next 2 fiscal years from this assessment. And you can see the 2 county trails is 4.4 million, and the others are much smaller because they involve many fewer parcels. So wrapping it up, the actions requested for today are to receive any public comments, then approve the engineer's report, adopt a resolution confirming the diagram and the assessment, and order the improvements, and then adopt a second resolution overruling the protests. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Any questions or comments from the board? Director Waspy.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah, for your thorough report. And I hear it every year, and it's great. But I just caught on to something because I was up in Stonebrae a couple days ago. And so when we refer to units, do we refer to improved lots, or do we talk about houses that are built?
Or which ones get these? Sorry,
Well,
so you're wondering.
I guess I'm asking for any of them because I'm seeing houses being built in Stonebrae as we speak. So are we increasing our revenue, and do we have a potential? I mean, can we count the lots that are available there in Stonebrae and say in the future we'll have this much more? And
Yeah,
I get any revenue?
Yes, so we do have our consultant here from NBS. I'll take a crack at this and then I'll turn it over to Miranda Ray, who's here from NBS. But yes, each year we do actually, in some of these areas, have additional parcels that are added. And I believe that's once the construction is completed and there's an actual title. Miranda, are you still here? And do you have anything you can add to that?
Yes, I'm still here. Hi. Yes, so it's based on units, and then when there's new development, there's usually some kind of parcel change within the county, and we're notified about it. And so then each unit or each lot will be charged the rate per unit, so they will start paying into that as well.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other board or questions or comments from the board? Director Lane.
Yeah, I just want to say that I appreciate former GM Pat O'Brien beginning this process, and there were some issues with people that didn't understand it, so each year when it comes before us again, I'm delighted how smoothly this goes and how few protests we receive. So thank you for everyone's work on it annually.
Great. Last chance for comments from the board. Okay, seeing none, I will now declare that the public hearing is open. And are there any public comments on this item, Madam Clerk?
No, President Rosario, there are not.
And just double check, are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this item?
I see no hands raised.
Great. If there are no other questions at this time, I will close the public hearing. And seeing no other public comments, are there any further comments from the board? Seeing none, then we will vote for the approval of 2 resolutions. So a motion is in order.
I move we approve the engineer's report, adopt a resolution confirming the diagram and assessment, and order the maintenance and improvements, and adopt a resolution overruling protests.
So,
That
and
has
if,
to be-
Is that too big a mouthful?
Has to be 2 separate resolutions.
Good try, Beverly.
Okay, so I move all those things except the final adopt a resolution of protest.
I'll second the larger part there.
We have a motion and a second.
Yes,
Madam Clerk, a roll call vote, please.
yes, President Rosario. Director Corbett,
Aye.
Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Coffey,
Aye.
Director Eccles,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Lane,
Aye.
and President Rosario.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimously approved.
And now motion is in order for the second part.
Well, I will move that.
Okay.
Overruling protests.
Yes.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Yes.
Yolanda? Roll call
Director
vote.
Corbett,
Aye.
Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Coffey,
Aye.
Director Eccles,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Lane,
Aye.
and President Rosario.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous approval.
Thank you very much. I echo Director Lane's sentiments regarding this process. Very smooth, very clear. Thank you. And now we are at, let's see, we're moving right along. Let's see. Now we are item 2B, authorization to amend the 2021 budget for mid-year appropriations and transfers.
Good afternoon, President Rosario and members of the board. Deborah Ocker, the Assistant General Manager of Finance and Management Services. And I'm here to present the mid-year review. So as part of the annual budget cycle, the district performs a mid-year review process. During this process, we accomplish 3 things. We do an overall check-in with all the divisions related to their operating budgets and revenues. We also address important needs that have come up since the adopted budget was approved in November. And one of the main things we are able to do during this process is address long-term liabilities and needs of the district. And that includes items that have been discussed at previous board workshops. So as part of this mid-year review process, we do utilize some of the adopted policies that have been adopted by the board of directors, including the general fund balance reserve policy and the balanced budget policy. And we work through this process, including all the divisions, our general manager and our deputy general manager. And because of that, I have many AGMs here to help me respond to any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation. And at the end, I'll have much help in responding to any questions that you may have today. So let's see if I'm starting my presentation. Everyone can see that okay. So I've just talked a little bit about closing out the prior year, and those are where we determine what opportunity funds are available or one-time funds that are available. And we work with all the divisions to look for priorities and needs for the general manager's consideration, and then go through that. The finance committee had a pretty thorough review of this proposal. And as we develop those recommendations, we also look at our revenue assumptions. And earlier this year, we did come to you and share with you that commercial property tax was under watch, that Alameda County had shared that they were unsure about how the commercial property tax was looking. But since then, we have received additional information that is in better order. Oops, let's see. Too far. There we are. We're in better shape in that area, but the current budget did reflect what we knew at the time in November, where we did reduce some of our revenues. So we saw more use in our parks, so we increased our day use fees by 2%, and these were starting with the 2019 numbers. We also had uncertainty on some of our activities like camping and swimming. And so we adjusted our revenues based on what we knew at the time, uncertainty of events that would happen. And so that's how our adopted budget is. In this review, we're not making any recommendations to change revenue at this time, but if anything does come up throughout the year, we will bring that back to the board. So that's the revenue side. And then on the expenditure side, as we do prioritize and look for where we have additional needs, our policy does recommend that we replace any use of our reserves, look at our safe and healthy forest management and our wildfire hazard reduction. As I mentioned, we look at board interests and reducing pension liabilities or other long-term liabilities that we have. We're also considering our infrastructure needs. So the policy does recommend that we try to fully fund our infrastructure fund, which our policy states that it should be around 9 million. We're not quite there, but our adopted budget has some funding in it. And then this mid-year includes a recommendation for funding that. Environmental remediation, and I'll go over some details of those. Repairing any damage to trails and parks. Typically that comes up when we're having, weather events as well. And then any adaptations to climate change. Those are some of the major considerations that we have as we put together our recommendations. So now I'm just going to go through some of the highlights of what is being recommended. All the details are attached to your staff report with some descriptions. But for the first category of replenishing reserves, we do hold a $2 million reserve or $2.2 million reserve for elections costs. And last year we spent down some of that. So we'd like to replenish that by $481,000. We also have a legal contingency. We spent down some of that last year and would like to replenish that. And then the current year general manager contingency for unexpected costs. We typically replenish that at mid-year as well, just to be ready for things. Those reserves, they do help any volatility that is going throughout the year, and so we really depend on that. Another major area is wildfire hazard reduction and weed abatement. As you know, we're working very hard at managing our fuels this year, and you've had reports of our tree mortality situation. So in addition to the FEMA funds that we have and Measure CC funds, we are requesting $1 million to be set aside for funding work outside of the FEMA area, which is the major East Bay Hills area. And then also there's $400,000 in stewardship biological monitoring recommended for that. And we have over $20 million in costs just at Anthony Chabot right now that is outlined. and we have been seeking additional funds from the state. We're very thankful that the state budget does include additional funding for the district in this area. Also, our Measure CC funds are winding down, and as we close out and complete projects, as we recommended at the board workshop, we would like to put any remaining funds into our fuels program, which would be available. It's within the CC and Measure FF zone. So an additional closeout of CC money of $855,000 would go in there. Also attached to your backup, you can see that there is a request for one-time purchases of equipment for weed abatement. The district has been examining all the regulatory requirements that are necessary for removing hazardous fuels on an annual basis. And in the past, we had through September to do all of this work, but now the intensity of the work has required us to do it much earlier and all at the same time. In the past, we would share equipment. That's just not possible anymore. So we have put in about $3.3 million of requests. You have seen some of these requests in the past. This pretty much rounds out additional equipment for the majority of our park needs. And I know if there's additional questions on that, AGM O'Connor is happy to answer them. But I'll go ahead on to the next slide. Related to environmental remediation, the closure of the gun club, we've been doing a lot of assessments out there. We just received a new report that the cleanup cost could be from 10 to 15 million. That's greater than what we had in our previous kind of preliminary assessment. We have been putting money aside in this area, but we're requesting 500,000 in this mid-year request to go towards the gun club cleanup. I think right now we have about 4.5 million available. So that would add 500,000 to that balance. Our Burrell Agricultural Park that is not open to the public yet. We've done some assessments there and found that there's an underground storage tank that needs to be removed with a cost of a minimum of 300,000. That's being requested. And continuing work at Point Isabel, which we do plan on sharing funding with the state because it is part of McLaughlin East Shore State Park, but requesting an additional 200,000 to continue the work in that area, which there's an estimated cost of $4 million there. So that starts to, as we start to chip away at those costs, recommending those. Then also just all of the changing climate issues, the drought response. The district has in their current adopted budget has some turf restoration projects. I think we've been working out at Miller Knox. You can see a picture there. But we really do have more work to do on water conservation, turf, and irrigation systems. So we have additional funding in the budget for over $2 million, about $2.5 million for that work. And then also our grazing program, which is livestock grazing. We really need additional funds for water infrastructure for those areas where the cattle is having a hard time getting water. And so we have $800,000 in a request for that area to continue that work. Safety has been a high priority and we've been looking at that. You know, during COVID, we identified the costs that we felt would be eligible for FEMA and OES reimbursement from COVID expenditures, and we have not been successful in getting great results in that. I know there has been a lot of funding out there and available to other agencies, but the district is still working with the state to get reimbursement for some of those costs. We will continue to do that work, but the money that we thought would be coming in over $1 million from the state, we haven't received that, so we need to recover that from our general fund. Also, with all of the with the drought and the stress of the trees, hazardous tree removal, we have a very robust program for removing hazardous trees in our more developed areas of our parks. And we'd like to fund 500,000 additional into that program. The item of wildfire smoke response has to do with an initiative that we started last year of assessing all of our facilities And our staff did an initial assessment. The board just recently approved a consultant that has a hygienist available to help us prioritize this work, but we know there will be additional facility improvements that we'd like to make to respond to wildfire smoke. So we're requesting $300,000 for that. And then our Trudeau Center, when there are power outages, we'd like that to be a safe place where staff can go and we can continue operations. So we are putting a generator out at Trudeau Center and are requesting $300,000. Additional safety related improvements or items through our risk management department is we also just improved our insurance program. Last year, we are based on a lot of the things that were going on. Our property insurance is the majority of this increase, but annually we do come during mid-year for those items once we get information from our insurers. Also, there are other risk management safety items that we're working on, developing additional policies and procedures and implementing that, including temporary staff to help us with that. And then supplies, upgrading generator switches. Also in these areas, we have some public safety items for equipment, weather reporting equipment, and electronic message boards, all related to safety, are included in our proposals. Some other items related to things that we've discussed at board workshops, aquatic facilities and making sure that we have money set aside for doing improvements there. We've done some work at Contra Loma, but we have additional work to do at that lagoon. We've identified work at, say, Cull Canyon and on Castro, just to name a few. We're also working on the project for Roberts Pool. So lots of aquatic facilities that need improvements. Our Coyote Hills Dunbarton Quarry campground is soon to be opening, and we have our service yard all designed and ready to go. We have a need for an additional $1 million. This would be an advance from the general fund to be recovered by tipping fees from the Dunbarton Quarry associates that would refund the general fund for this $1 million. There are also some other items related to the Habitat Conservancy planning for data management services for collecting data and monitoring that in our Interp and Rec programs, additional grant writing services for all of our large grants like the Build Grant and Prop 68. And then also joining a program through Sonoma State University to improve our cultural resources, data management, and sharing of data with them. So those are a few of the items in that category. Other board interests that are not general funded include we are working with, I believe it's Contra Costa County, to get the trail over the Orwood Bridge, and we're responsible for the up and the down of the bridge. So funding that with Measure WW funds, and then continuing the work at Llama Lane to fix the design or continue the design work there, which I think is funded through our risk fund. Some additional items that are requested through the divisions. Remember, we have all the divisions put forward needs. And so in the past, we have put money aside for natural infrastructure, such as dredging, soil erosion, and things for our creeks, lakes, and ponds, requesting $800,000 in that category. We have been working with the state to develop a housing area for the Conservation Corps to develop a place where they can camp while they're doing work, fuels management type work or weed abatement type work in our parks. We're looking at Holly Court. We would share the cost for that. The $300,000 would be the district's commitment at this point for a fairly significant redo of those buildings there out at Las Trampas area. Also, we're working on our website. So there's a picture of kind of the face of our website. As you know, our website provider gave us very short notice that they were getting out of the business, and we've hired a new website, which will be updated updated and redesigned. We're still working on the fencing out at Ohlone based on the fires and just really doing a good assessment of what's out there. Also, other wildfire hazard reduction in the area of cultural resources and other equipment such as a pumper truck. I mentioned our major infrastructure renovation and replacement fund. We do have a practice of funding some of that at the adopted budget time period and then also appropriating mid-year funds into that fund, moving it from the general fund to the what we call the MIR fund. And then also we would like to appropriate funds out of that internal service fund for our merry-go-round. I think we brought to your attention earlier that we needed work on the foundation and the roof. So it's not the merry-go-round per se, it's the facility holding the merry-go-round. And our design and construction team got some bids for that. Also replacing the solar panels at our administration building that are at the end of their useful life. Doing work for preventative maintenance, such as replacing roofs out at Redwood Park. We like to kind of tackle one park at a time or really highlight one park at a time. So we've identified Redwood Park in this budget request. And then also looking to the future for when we are ready to move our public safety headquarters into our new facility and repurposing those Lake Chabot buildings. So putting money aside for preparing for that type of repurposing. And then there are some other projects that qualify for major infrastructure and replacement on your list. In the category of Measure FF on your consent calendar today, you approved an agreement between the Oakland Zoo and the district. That's kind of an ongoing practice. Measure CC included $100,000 annually towards the zoo enhancing conservation practices. And so we're continuing to do that with Measure FF. It was not included in the annual budget, so we're requesting that funding here. And then closing out additional Measure CC projects that didn't have all the appropriations set aside during the board workshops. We brought these to you and shared with you that we'd like to put forward the final funding appropriations. That includes some shoreline access funding at Miller Knox that just had not been appropriated yet. We were waiting till we got further along with the removing of the railroad tracks in that area. Finalizing the final funding for the Tidewater Day Use area out of Measure CC. And then there's some additional funding that's available for monitoring the Dotson Marsh and Albany Beach, which were also commitments in Measure CC related to environmental remediation. We just approved the second of our landscape and lighting districts. And after we do finalize those reports, we see that there's funding available for equipment and other projects that have been identified in those districts. So we have about $330,000 of recommended appropriations there. And then also under Measure FF, we typically don't have as part of our annual cycle for banking fees for the bond funds, but putting aside $150,000 that will cover our banking fees related to our bonds for a couple of years. We have trustee funds there and investment management funds there. So in total, it's we have over 19 million of general funds. The special revenue funds are related to the Measure FFs and CCs and landscape and lighting districts. Our risk funding for safety, capital projects, and our major infrastructure funding. So that is the summary of the proposals that we have for you today. Before I go on to answering any questions, I know one of the questions that came up at the Finance Committee meeting and also through board members is, can I share a little bit about how this money is made available? And so on your consent calendar, you just accepted our annual financial report, which was, reviewed by our external auditors, our finance committee, and our PAC, and that reports out the 2020 results. And within those results, we did see that our revenue was greater than our expenditures and above, and our fund balance increased greater than our reserve requirements per our policy. And so that's where these opportunity funds, our one-time monies, come from. And this, I will say, the 2020 year was a little unique. It was during COVID. And on the expenditure side, we had areas where we did not spend the money that was budgeted. And those areas are some in salaries and benefits. We didn't hire our summer staff. That was about $3 million. We didn't have our intern program, another $200,000. We also, just had retirements and turnover and general vacancies during the year that were a little bit different than maybe in a normal year. Also, our supplies and services in the area of, INR programming, that's pretty easy to know. We did not print our RIN, our regional in nature. There was significant savings there. We didn't spend as much on fuel or maintenance of our vehicles, maintaining our aquatic facilities that were closed during the year. There were several areas when you add those all up that led to savings in supplies and services that were very unusual compared to a normal year. I think those are some of the big ones that I wanted to highlight. And on the revenue side, there was so much uncertainty on the revenue side, and we did I think we did the right thing when we reduced our expectations for revenue in charges for services. We reduced our budget by over $7 million, and we still came in a little short in that area. But property tax, secured property tax hit exactly on budget. And then the unsecured amount was greater than what we expected, along with some redevelopment funds. And our interest revenue came in greater than expected because of unrealized gains at December 31st. So those are some of the areas of these funds are available from. I just wanted to highlight that because I know that was a question. But with all of that, if there are any questions about the proposed mid-year budget adjustments, I'm happy to answer them or request help from other divisions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Director Corbett.
Thank you very much, President Rosario. EGM Ocker, I just have a quick question. I'm sorry I didn't raise this earlier, and it may actually be covered within some of the more general categories, but I do remember at the board workshop that in setting priorities that the board had voted to look at some improvements at the Martin Luther King Shoreline Center. And I didn't see that on the list, but maybe it's covered in a more general category.
I think if I could have AGM O'Connor share a little bit about what's going on there, that would be great.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, President Rosario, members of the board. Jim O'Connor, your AGM of Operations. Director Corbett, in answer to your question, we are bringing forward, we'll be bringing forward a project to make improvements at the Shoreline Center and the adjacent Pelican picnic area as part of our 2022 budget process. And so that's our intention at this point, is bring that forward as part of the 22 budget as a request from operations.
There is actually funding in here for the exterior improvements to the Shoreline Center. So that is included in mid-year for about $70,000.
Yeah, those are external improvements to the Shoreline Center itself, but the larger project to make improvements to the deck that's attached to the Shoreline Center and the Pelican picnic area will be coming as part of the budget process.
Okay, great. I will be watching for that. Thank you very much.
Great. Any other board members? Director Coffey.
Thank you. Deborah, there is a reference in our background materials to one of the priorities influencing these new appropriations was reducing pension liabilities, stabilizing future pension costs, but I'm missing what in the background materials is supporting that priority. what actual expenditures?
Director Coffey, we did not make a recommendation for pre-funding pensions in this mid-year request, but you are pointing out something that has been brought to my attention by other directors, including President Rosario. And so I think he was going to bring that up as a question as well. There is not any additional funding for pensions in this. However, in the annual budget, we did continue to fund our pension trust.
And I think in the past, we've used these supplemental allocations for that special pension reserve. And it's probably in some model here for this report and just wasn't an actual allocation this time.
Correct. We didn't make an actual allocation, but we have found when we do provide these kind of one-time funds for pensions, we get a savings that's beyond what we're contributing. So it is worth a discussion.
All right, at some other point, I'm curious how that reserve fund is doing actually, and that's what triggered my looking for it. I just wanted to comment, President Rosario, that this is once again a testament to the superb budget management Deborah and her team undertake. From what I've observed for the last 4 years, every year, to manage the expenditures, underestimate revenues, that's a great problem to have. And I'm just very appreciative of this superb budget management that's demonstrated every year.
Yeah, I agree. Any other comments from the board or before I pipe in? So a perfect segue to Director Coffey's question about pension. That was my biggest concern, is that I'm really nervous about not adding to the pension trust. Last year we put in $1 million, and there was a recommendation from our former district council to put in 2, but we did put in the 1. So just because I'm conservative that way is when it comes to the pension, and the fact that it does in the long run save us a lot more money. I would like to make a recommendation that we find $500,000, find some way to find $500,000 to go into the pension trust.
Thank you, President Rosario. We did have a chance to talk about that over the weekend, and so and I spoke with Deputy General Manager Alvarez, and so we do support that because it does provide such a savings to the district when we do front that money. So we would propose maybe reducing our contribution to the major infrastructure fund by $500,000 and providing $500,000 for pension costs, if that is something that the board would like to consider.
Up for discussion. Any other board members? Director Wasky, Director Wieskamp.
I would just like to echo the other directors saying that I'm just so happy, and it's such a luxury to have the ability to have this much money that we can spend for what we really need to. And just a comment, I know it's way too late in the game. I do lament, and I take responsibility also on our board priorities. I really lament the fact that we have such big items and $800,000 to dredging and other projects. I mean, we have, if I'm not mistaken, about 4 lakes that we can't provide swimming to anymore. And Temescal is one of them. And I think it's such a shame that at some point, I really think we need to bite the bullet and spend some money to dredge that lake, because what we've been trying, not our fault, but it seems to be the answer, seems to be pointing towards biting the bullet and dredging that lake. And I think we really need to consider where we're spending this money. And I love doing our infrastructure stuff, building nice places for our employees, doing nice things for pension funding. But I think we do have an obligation to our constituents to make nice parks and make them available. So that's all.
Great. Director Wieskamp.
You know, it is always so difficult when you're trying to do such very important things. And I go listen to Deborah, and I know how much time they have spent, everybody trying to figure out how do you parcel out the different funds. I believe in putting money into the pensions because you never know what's going to happen. And you want to make sure that the retirees are taken care of. But on the other hand, I agree with Dennis. We have so much land with so many projects that we want to get done. I appreciate all the work that has been done by staff trying to figure out how you do take all these little huge projects and try to parcel out money to keep things going. So thank you for that.
Great. Director Lane.
Yes, well, you know, I'm reluctant to remove, you know, to change what the staff priorities were for mid-year to put into pension. And so I guess what I would like to know is if we're going to take it out of the major infrastructure category, what within those 10 items is not going to be funded?
There you go.
Thank you, Director Lane. So the sum of the proposed expenditures out of the infrastructure fund do add up to about, what is it, $2.1 million. So it would cover that that amount of the appropriation. And I think, you know, annually we come back to you with a more complete report on the infrastructure fund and where the balances are. We did have design and construction come forward with a lot of work that they're working on that's funded by that fund. And I think for the finance committee, we're hoping to bring an item forward in July to talk more about our major infrastructure projects and where we are there. And staff does feel like, you know, we support the policy and know that, you know, the recommendation is to fund it at $9 to $10 million annually. And we are working our way towards our bandwidth to be able to spend that much money, but we feel that we have enough to fund our current projects right now. So
I don't think I quite understand that. So, you know, if we're taking 500,000 out of that, does that mean we're not replacing the solar panels for the administration building, which is about 550 as I read this here, or are we going to reduce doing the work on the merry-go-round? I mean, the ones that are the larger ones are redwood roof repairs and repurposing public safety. So, you know, I would be reluctant to remove 500,000 from that unless we knew exactly what was not going to be funded.
yeah, I think we're recommending that we remove the 500,000 from the $3 million appropriation and transfer. So we are not recommending that we would not do any of those projects. But I hear you, Director Lane. There is a great need in our infrastructure work.
And this is the first
option
I've heard of pulling 500,000 out for the pension. How much are we putting in the to add to the pension trust this year now? Nothing.
I might have to call on Deborah Spalding to get the exact right number. Deborah, can you tell us?
The question was how much we funded this year. $1 million is in the budget this year, and we put in 250,000 each quarter of that million. So we're trying to dollar cost average it in. And I believe the total amount funded to date is like seven and a half, a little over 7.5 million.
So it seems to me that we're working on that. You know, and each, along with many other of these funds, we are we're not able to do what we would like each year. So we take these bites. So, I mean, I don't think I could support this if we're going to pull 500,000 out of what was proposed for our mid-year.
Director Eccles.
And just to clarify, so what I'm understanding from Deborah's comments or AGM Acker's comments is that there's 3 million available for the major infrastructure renovation replacement fund. And then there's a proposed expenditures of a little over 2 million or about 2.1 million. And so the 500,000 would not impact that list of projects that she has there. Is that correct? Am I understanding that right? So in effect, we're not saying that any of these projects would not be able to go forward in the major infrastructure and renovation replacement fund.
That's correct, Director Eccles.
Okay, so we can put 500,000 into the pensions and not impact these projects because there's enough money in the fund. And so certainly I would support that. I think that's really important to make sure that we are funding the pension and that we also, particularly given that it not only helps our employees over the long run, but it also pays off in terms of our own budget. So I really strongly support that.
Director Coffey, then Director Corbett.
Well, the thought that flows from that, Elizabeth, is that there will be $500,000 less in the major infrastructure fund to call upon in the future. So that's the actual trade-off that's going on here.
Well, yes, that's correct. But it doesn't mean that any of these proposed projects have to be cut. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not like we're going to take money now from, the merry-go-round or solar panels or anything else. There's enough money in the fund that we can do all of those projects and have $900,000 left over. Or if you put $500,000 into the pension, you still have $400,000 left over. Yes, as a whole, you would still have less money in that fund, but you can meet the given current proposals. You can fund the current proposals.
That's correct, Director Eccles, and Director Lane is correct that it's reducing the total funding toward the program, but it's not reducing those proposed projects that we put forward.
Director Corbett, and then Dr. Ana Alvarez.
I do understand the various comments that have been made, but I would say that even though this is a change than what was discussed previously at the Finance Committee, I think it is a responsible thing to do. If we do have an opportunity to add a little more to pay down the pension funds, we know that these are long-term and major responsibilities of ours. We also know that when we place money in this fund to help pay down pension liabilities, we actually save some money as we go along. And we do know that we have, there's things that are changing, new rules, new things we hear from PERS, etc. So I honestly think in the long run that this is, I would support this and I would accept this because it will save us money and it is a responsible thing to do. So maybe next time we can hear about it before the Finance Committee meeting. That would be good.
Well, I
so
think
I certainly understand why the chair is concerned.
Yeah, because that's why you have a Finance Committee.
Yes.
This is discussing issues.
Yes. But I would support it. I think it's okay in the long run, but I certainly understand the concerns. Thank you.
Dr. Alvarez, and then Director Coffey.
Yes, thank you, Director Rosario. Deputy General Manager, Dr. Ana Alvarez here. I appreciate the conversation that's taking place here. I think that the interest here is to be able to realize some savings and also to taper down on long-term liabilities. And the board has the opportunity to do that as part of your 2022 budget process as well. So you don't need to feel that you have to do that at this moment. While I appreciate the interest and the spirit behind that interest, we could also do that we can have a broader conversation and discuss this as part of the 2022 budget planning process.
Director Coffey.
I'm sort of with Director Lane on this, and given what Ana just said, that I think to me is preferable because, the flip side of this whole issue is is our pension reserve fund healthy? So, I mean, is there a compulsion to add another $500,000 to it if in fact we're on target for where it's supposed to be? I remember when it was created, the ultimate target was $10 million. This is money not being spent. It's in reserve until there's a CalPERS hiccup that causes us to have otherwise used general funds to make up a difference in what we budgeted for CalPERS contributions. So that money there actually earns more than our ordinary surplus. So it's a nice place to park surplus funds, just on that fact alone, rather than the major infrastructure fund, which doesn't earn very good returns on investment. But I guess my major question is whether we're really off track on the pension reserve totals that are there. So from 7 to 7.5, and maybe if we have a further study at that, and as Anna's suggesting as part of our future budget discussions, is a better way to address that. I'm just not convinced.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Thank you, Director Coffey. That is one of the reasons why staff didn't propose, because we are finding that our overall total pension liabilities, we're doing pretty well at December 31st based on the market. Our funded status did increase in some cases to 100% funded in some of our retirement plans, not in our PERS plan, but in some of the other ones. And we are on target with funding our pension trust as we planned. So I do appreciate Deputy Manager Alvarez saying it's better to bring it back to the Finance Committee and have more discussion about that as well.
Okay, Director Corbett.
Mr. President, maybe you can ask for more money next year.
Yes.
Avoid this amendment and you know, talk to the folks.
Yeah, look at that.
I think I see.
What do you think?
I think there's a majority that would prefer to go to next year's budget, which is I'd be more than happy to withdraw my recommendation.
Go along with that.
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then we'll really be taking a look at that, you know, as the budget is developed.
Yes, just remember it is part of the top seven points for decision-making process for the mid-year. So with that, I will rescind my my recommendation. And then we have a, and I really appreciate that discussion. Thank you. And so with that, we are, a motion is in order to accept the mid-year budget.
Okay, thank you very much for the discussion. I thought it was very helpful. And I would move we authorized amending the 2021 budget for the mid-year appropriations and transfers as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Director Corbett. And Yolanda, roll call, please.
Yes, President Rosario. Director Wasby.
Aye.
Director Coffey.
Aye.
Director Eccles.
Aye.
Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
Director Lane.
Yes.
Director Corbett.
Aye.
And President Rosario.
Aye.
Thank you. Unanimous approval of item B.
Great. Does everybody would like at least a 10-minute break?
You're the chair.
Okay.
Howard.
We'll take a short recess, 10-minute break.
Okay.
We're doing really well. Thank you very much.
All right, see you in a little bit.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good break. And we are now at item 3, the general manager's comments. And 3A is presentation, Chief Government and Legislative Affairs, Eric Fueller, and Legislative and Policy Management Analyst, Lisa Baldinger, will provide an update on the Strategy for Inclusive Community Engagement Project.
Thank you, President Rosario and members of the board. Wanted to just take a moment to also thank you, President Rosario, for participating in the listening sessions for this item, as well as the support of Carol Johnson and Public Affairs for this project. And I just want to add, I've been very impressed with the professional approach that the Center for Regional Change has taken. And with that, I would like to hand it over to the project manager, Lisa Baldinger, to introduce our team from CRC.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you, President Rosario, members of the board. My name is Lisa Baldinger, and I'm the Legislative and Policy Management Analyst in the General Manager's Office. To give a little bit of background and context to this project, following the unprecedented success of Measure FF in 2018, notably outperforming the voter survey conducted prior by landline, it became a core focus of the government affairs team to guide all future surveying and advocacy engagement in a manner that better amplifies all voices of the East Bay's diverse voters and park supporters to ensure for inclusive and equitable investments. In 2019, with active support from public affairs, acquisition, stewardship and development, operations, other colleagues, the board, and community partners, we launched the Park and Public Interest Survey to assess survey methodologies, as well as to learn more about public interest as they relate to access to parks and trails, projects, programs, and future investments. This survey received over 8,000 individual responses from across the East Bay. It highlighted the importance of text as a survey feedback option and the need for multiple languages to be available for survey response. In 2020, we utilized this learned informational methodology to conduct a scientific follow-up survey. This survey was conducted then in English and Spanish. It was made available via text, and it was able to gather responses from community members reflective of the East Bay's demographics and was geographically distributed across the region. However, we recognize the need to acknowledge and address the 2019 survey's low geographic and demographic response areas. To do so, we partnered with the UC Davis Center for Regional Change to host intentional community listening sessions and a third community survey over the last 6 months. Here to present on our process and learnings are Carolyn Abrams, Brandon Louie, and Bernadette Austin from the Center for Regional Change.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate this. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carolyn Abrams, and I'm with the UC Davis Center for Regional Change. I'm joined by my colleagues, Brandon Louie and Bernadette Austin. And our team has been working on this effort for the past almost 10 months now, actually. And I wanted to ask, Lisa, would you mind sharing the slides, and then we can dive right in? Perfect. You can go ahead to the next slide. So just to give everyone a quick overview, we really dove into this effort with the intention of cultivating new relationships, both with community partners and individuals and some of these target populations. And also with the understanding that we really wanted to acquire a greater depth of information about the needs of these specific populations that in previous surveys have been underrepresented. So our work really focused on this relationship building. It became more of an iterative process, and that informed how we did the outreach and engagement for the survey ultimately. And so back in February, we started out with some listening sessions. The first one was largely focused on existing partners and organizations that have trusted relationships already established with the East Bay Regional Park District. And then with that information, we were able to do two things. So one was identify gaps in terms of which populations were not represented by these current organizations, which allowed us to conduct further outreach to new organizations and invite them to some of the additional listening sessions that we were conducting. And then we were also able to ask the existing partners to make recommendations about who else we should be talking to, and then leverage their connections within the community to continue that outreach. So both through the listening sessions and that engagement process, we gathered a lot of valuable feedback, which then informed the revisions that we made to the survey. And then we're also able to tap into those relationships to disseminate the survey and really try and reach some of these target populations. So through the survey revision process, and then again, the outreach and engagement around the survey, we were able to get a substantial number of responses and begin to increase the representation of those groups that we wanted to reach. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to toss it over to Brandon, and he's going to run you through what we heard from the listening sessions.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, President Rosario and board members for having us here today and for supporting this effort. Next slide, please. So I'll go a little bit over the listening session process and then some of the key highlighted findings of what we heard. And this was an effort that was also reported to the legislative committee a little while back. So we had 3 virtual listening sessions that we hosted with a total of 45 participants. You can see the variety of discussion topics that were highlighted, assessing current partnerships and engagement with the Park District, looking at opportunities to improve access to resources and amenities. And then, as Carolyn mentioned, really finding ways to increase the effectiveness of outreach and relationship building for both this and future efforts. So we had a number of current stakeholders who participated primarily in the first session, but also in the other 2 as well. And then the following 2 were really focused on bringing in additional stakeholders who may not have already been engaged with the Park District, from youth serving organizations, public health entities, outdoor recreational and environmental groups, and advocacy groups. Next slide, please. And so to highlight a few of the key findings that we heard back, kind of one of the key areas was looking at ways to elaborate on what's drawing folks to the Park District, what ways this has been and could be a valuable resource and or relationship for groups and individuals. So certainly heard a great deal about people's personal connection and sense of belonging to parks. Many folks, particularly those who are currently engaged, having oftentimes lifelong experiences and relationships with their local parks, and that was one of the key areas that drew them into the Park District relationship as well. We certainly heard a lot about really effective programmatic partnerships that you all have established with a variety of different groups, including youth serving orgs, organizations specifically focused on Black, Indigenous, and people of color, opportunities and networks, and then other constituent groups and communities that were getting heavily engaged with the Park District. Folks definitely highlighted a number of key recreational opportunities and educational resources that were really drawing them to the parks, including a number of online and virtual programming that was occurring during the pandemic that was also seen as a key kind of entry point for folks who are not at that time able to maybe engage in person with the Park District. And then overall, heard a lot about the importance of ways in which people were creating opportunities for self-care, physical health, and social and emotional well-being, in addition to some interest around kind of reciprocity projects in the parks, where folks might be interested in land tending, restoration, and other opportunities moving forward. Next slide, please. Another key area that we looked at was understanding how to expand upon current strategies that are working well and improve areas as well when it comes to access to both physical resources and amenities and programmatic resources and amenities. On the kind of physical side, when it came to some of the barriers and challenges that we heard about, certainly transportation being one of the key areas. And then when it came to some of the physical amenities at the parks, we did hear from folks about kind of the need for additional supports for differently abled park users, seniors, people with mobility concerns, and then also heard about perceptions of safety and the importance of safety at both kind of a physical sense, but also in some senses a social sense as well. And that kind of leading to some of the social areas, sense of belonging and feeling welcome at the parks was certainly identified as a key important area that folks highlighted, and also a need from some participants, in addition to kind of just an overall exposure to the parks and being aware about these parks and these resources and amenities being available to them. And then thinking about the importance of representation and the diversity of representation of both staff and of users of the park system. Next slide, please. And then thinking about some of the effective outreach areas too, really identifying who the park should be connecting with, focusing on more and how best to do so. It was really important to emphasize inclusivity, both in language and in representation, physical access, right? Thinking about the kind of also providing ways for culturally appropriate and inclusive activities and educational and interpretive elements at the parks. Some folks had some interesting suggestions for tech options and ways that this might be done in a variety of creative ways, which we'll be highlighting kind of further in our final report. And the importance of also combating the erasure of Indigenous culture uplifting local indigenous peoples' practices and traditional ecological knowledge, finding kind of different ways to introduce people to the parks through the expansion of in-person and virtual and online programmatic opportunities. The importance of also normalizing that BIPOC folks are also spending time outdoors and participating in outdoor activities. So really finding ways to support that and enhance that. And then through that, really leveraging peer outreach, direct connections through friends and family, and also communication through community members who are seen as trusted partners and trusted leaders through key organizations. So that really informed both the relationship building, but also the survey revision. And for that, I will pass it back to Carolyn.
Great, thank you, Brandon. Next slide, please. So as Brandon mentioned, we made a number of revisions to the survey based on the feedback that we captured through the listening sessions. And so some of the key changes that were made included adding questions about feeling welcome or unwelcome at the parks and the trails. Also trying to identify factors that were contributing to sense of safety at parks and trails. Also identifying desired features, amenities or activities, as well as some of the barriers that are preventing people from actually utilizing the parks. And then finally, identifying some of the opportunities that exist for additional engagement, partnerships, and outreach opportunities. And then based on the feedback that had been received previously and through the listening sessions, we also looked at the accessibility of the survey itself. So with the limitations of COVID and as far as reaching the populations that we were trying to reach, we chose to offer the survey in 4 different languages. So English, traditional Chinese, Korean, and Spanish. And then we also had the opportunity to work with a community partner who advocates for people with visual impairments. And so they circulated the draft survey to a group of individuals, essentially to provide a thorough review of the online survey, provide feedback about the accessibility of the survey platform, and also like the format of the questions themselves. And so that proved to be very valuable just in terms of making sure that the survey was accessible in terms of its usage, as well as the languages that it was offered in. Next slide, please. So I did want to run through, and we won't be able, in this interest of time, we won't be able to cover all of the survey data that was captured. So I'm going to focus on some of the key data points that we collected, primarily the new questions that were added to the survey this year. And then at the end, I'm happy to open it up for questions. And if there's anything that you all are interested in, I can expand on that. And then just so that you all know, the full analysis of both the survey and the listening sessions will be provided in our final report to the East Bay Regional Park District later this month. Next slide, please. So in total, we had over 3,300 people complete the survey. And the breakdown as far as gender was fairly even between male and female, with a small percentage of folks identifying as non-binary or gender non-conforming. And then we had the remaining respondents who chose not to specify their gender, which was also a very small percentage. As far as age goes, we received a substantial number of surveys from people above the age of 40, with a fairly even distribution among those age categories. And then for the remaining respondents, 4% were categorized as youth or young adults below the age of 25, and 19% were between the ages of 25 and 39. As far as the racial and ethnic composition of survey respondents, they were predominantly white, making up about 63% of total respondents. And this was followed most closely by Asian, South Asian, and Asian American respondents, who made up 11% of respondents. It's also notable that we had about 10% of survey respondents decline to state their race or ethnicity. So you'll see that as the 3rd largest category. And then the remaining racial and ethnic categories each comprised about 6% or less of survey respondents. Next slide, please. So one of the new questions that we added to the survey was really about people's use of the parks and trails during the COVID-19 pandemic. So in response to this question, we had approximately 1/3 of respondents who stated that they're using the parks about the same amount during the pandemic. But then very positively, we had almost 50% of respondents state that they've used the parks and trails either somewhat more or significantly more since the start of the pandemic. Next slide, please. And as a follow-up question, we also asked individuals if they intended to continue their increased park usage following the pandemic as things begin to return to normal. And over 95% of respondents said that they plan to continue their visitation to the parks and trails. Next slide, please. So we also, as I mentioned before, we asked folks whether they feel welcome when they visit East Bay Regional Parks and Trails. And the overwhelming majority of respondents were very, very positive in their response, in that we had almost half stating that they feel very welcome and a quarter stating that they feel somewhat welcome. And the remaining categories, either folks felt neither welcome or unwelcome, and then a small number as it kind of trickled down into the other categories of feeling somewhat unwelcome or very unwelcome. Next slide, please. So another question that we asked was really about the barriers and the obstacles that make it challenging to visit or entirely prevent folks from visiting or using the parks and trails. So this was a multiple choice option or question with the option to also kind of fill in the blank if people wanted to elaborate and provide a choice that wasn't already listed. So of the responses, there were a number that we offered, but the top 5 really came in as folks saying that there really are no barriers to visiting the parks and trails. And this was about 17% of responses. And then this was followed by the category of other, which I'll get to in a second. So I'm going to set that aside. But then we also had a lot of folks saying that parking availability was a barrier. That was about 13% of responses. Personal safety came in at 9%. And then folks also identified that there aren't the right recreational activities being offered. And then there's also limited or no trail maps and information. So those are really the top 5. But as far as the other category, which made up about 16% of responses, upon further analysis, it really shows that those responses fall into the other categories that were already offered as multiple choice options, but were really more of like an elaboration on their individual experience with those barriers. Next slide, please. And the last data point that I'll cover is really about the question where we asked folks what they would like to see added or expanded at the East Bay Parks and Trails. So again, just looking at the top 5 responses, since there were quite a number that we posed as multiple choice options, was really focused on designated mountain bike trails. That was about 12%. We also had folks identify water bottle filling stations. And then that was followed by Indigenous land acknowledgements. We also had folks identify recycling or compost containers as an amenity that they would like to see, and then also including off-leash dog areas at the parks. Next slide, please. So just to kind of wrap things up, and I know that that was a quick run through of a lot of information. So again, we're happy to answer questions, but before we do that, I did want to acknowledge the great work of the East Bay Regional Park District team. A lot of leadership and effort went into this work, and we've had a very productive and collaborative relationship with folks. And so through all of the stages of this project, the outreach, the engagement, the sharing the survey and getting the word out through different platforms, it's been very, very fruitful. And so I just want to pause and sort of thank everybody for their contributions to that. And then in addition to the East Bay leadership, we also just wanted to acknowledge all of the amazing community partners that contributed their time and insight to this effort. And really with their help and with their contributions, it allowed us to sort of expand not only the reach of the survey, but also the development of new partnerships for the East Bay Regional Park District. And we'll have a full list of those individuals and organizations in our final report. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions, and we'll see if our team can answer anything that you all have on your mind.
Great, thank you so much. Questions from the board? Oh, there must be something. Director Lane.
Trying to unmute. Often the regional parks provide a different kind of recreational possibility than, for instance, parks that are inside various cities around. So would you talk a little bit about what people were wanted to see us have that they haven't found in the parks?
Yeah, I'd be happy to elaborate. So this was a really apparent theme that sort of emerged through multiple questions. It came up when folks were asked essentially what makes them feel unwelcome. It also came up in some of the open-ended responses when folks were talking about what they would like to see added to the parks or see more resources put toward. And it was really this tension between the multi-use of the trails that are in the regional parks. And so there seemed to be a bit of tension between mountain bike users, hikers, and then equestrian, like horseback riding. And really it came down to folks not feeling like the trail usage was being shared, feeling like their physical safety was perhaps like at risk or threatened based on some of the multi-use of these trails. And then also feeling like it was discouraging to try and go out and, you know, have an intended use of what they were going to do. And with that expectation, having that sort of be, you know, either that being challenging based on like what other park users were there for, or just feeling like the activity that they set out to do was not possible. So I think a little bit more clarity, and that also came up as far as wanting more clarity as far as the signage goes, maps and trail information, and just, I guess, park users really respecting the multitude of uses and other, what other folks are doing essentially that might be different from what they're doing at the parks. So.
Okay, but what about things like soccer fields?
So that didn't really come up. And I think that based on the way that the questions were framed, we weren't really looking at, you know, expanded uses beyond what might be feasible within the parks. So we did ask folks, you know, what they primarily use the regional parks for. And, you know, we received a lot of positive responses. Aside from the, as I mentioned, one of the responses to that open-ended question as far as why there might be barriers to using the parks, and saying that there were some of the recreational activities offered didn't really match what they were looking for. So I would need to go back to some of the open-ended responses and pull through to give you a clear answer on that one, though.
Thank you.
Dr. Eccles.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this work. It's really important, and I really appreciate your approach and bringing this back for your report. And so just want to say thank you. First of all, I had a couple of questions. First of all, on the survey responses themselves, even with the outreach and new partnerships, the percentage of Latinos and Blacks responding to the survey is very, very low. And so I'm just wondering what ideas you have to improve that response, so we really are getting, you know, data from all groups in the community.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in really quick, and then I welcome Brandon or Bernadette to chime in as well. So one thing that our team has talked about is that depending on who you're really trying to reach, there are different methods of data collection that are most effective. So the folks that typically have the time and the resources to sit down and respond to a survey and are seeing the survey link through social media outlets, or, you know, the local Compass guide or things like that, may be a very specific population, be it white, older park users. And so through that outreach, that's primarily who we've gotten as respondents to the survey. However, if we look back at the listening sessions and who we were able to engage in those spaces, we had a very diverse representation of individuals who either serve at organizations or individuals within organizations that serve these other populations who contributed in the listening sessions and also responded to the survey. But it's very likely that because those were smaller groups, those numbers are not as largely represented in the survey data, which is why I think the content and like the feedback that we received through the listening sessions was very valuable. And it doesn't, for us, it's not necessarily a numbers thing where it's like, oh, well, we had 40 something participants in the listening sessions, but 3,300 survey respondents. We have to also think about, you know, the perspective of the individuals and the spaces in which they were engaged. As far as further outreach and trying to, you know, make sure that we are capturing those voices, I think it really is going to be a matter of utilizing some of these other outreach tactics, whether it is listening sessions or community meetings or very targeted outreach where perhaps East Bay Regional Park District staff, sans COVID, are able to be present at some of their organizations' meetings or events to really capture some of that input from these park users that might not be represented currently.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. That makes sense. And my follow-up question is in the survey itself, well, actually either in the survey or in the listening sessions, are you able to segment? Well, you must be able to, like, so for the survey, for example, to take the to take the responses and look at it by the the Latinos who responded and the Blacks who responded and others who responded, because I think that even if it is a lower response, it would be helpful to look at what those different groups are saying, even if they're underrepresented in the traditional survey.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's definitely something that our team plans to do, and that will be captured in the final report. So we can basically look at the cross tabulations of very specific demographic groups and those survey responses to see, based on age or gender or race and ethnicity, how they're responding to certain questions to see if there are any salient findings compared to what we're just seeing like when we're looking at the entire collective response.
Great, thank you.
Director Corbett.
Well, I'd also like to say thank you for putting together this information for us. I think it's a huge step. It's something that when I first joined the board, I was sort of wondering why we hadn't done more of this. So I'm very happy to see that we are doing this. And I think it's extremely important. And, I'm used to looking at data too. And I always want to make sure that the numbers represent the users if we're truly doing outreach. So for me, the numbers look a little, the numbers in the survey don't look, if I were to take a walk in most of our parks, those numbers don't match the who I see using our park. So for me, I would like to figure out how we can make sure that we are continuing to survey the various demographics of our district by age and making sure that we are inclusive as well. And we certainly could do more of that, but I know that this is a big first step. So something, maybe I just didn't hear this. So you stated that there were 45 participants and that was in the listening sessions, right? How was the, and this is the part maybe you did say and I missed, the survey, how was it sent out to the district? How did we, get it out there for people to answer? Did we target it? Maybe you mentioned that, but I missed it.
No, great question. So the survey was conducted entirely online. So we didn't offer any hard copies of the survey, but it was posted on the East Bay Regional Park District's website. It was sent out through the social media channels. It was also featured in a few news outlets, I believe, and Lisa, feel free to chime in as well. And then we also sent out individual emails following up with the participants from the listening sessions and asking them if they would be willing and able to circulate the survey to their membership or their groups that they work with within the community. And so really trying to leverage some of those relationships that were being cultivated, as well as relying on the existing trusted partnerships that the East Bay already has with community organizations and making sure that they're either able to send it to a listserv or announce it at a meeting or something of that sort. And so we did a lot of follow-up with those groups to try and make sure that we were capturing some of these populations that might be served by other organizations. And Lisa, I'm not sure if you want to chime in or add anything to that.
Somebody chime in? No?
Sure, I'll add just briefly to your point, Director Corbett. This is an ongoing process. As I shared in sort of the introduction, that in 2019, the survey response demographics were even less reflective. And so we are moving in a positive direction in terms of our methodology and our inclusive approach. And great thanks to the Center for Regional Change and all of their guidance and leadership in that area.
Okay. And In the groups that we did invite for the listening sessions, I have two kind of pointed questions. Do you think our numbers are skewed at all by the groups we did invite and how they advocated within their groups to advocate for certain issues? Do we think these numbers are truly representative of the users of the park district, or could they be a little swayed or skewed based on who was invited to the first listening sessions?
Yeah, that's a good question. Just to clarify, do you think the numbers that are being captured by the survey are skewed, or just the numbers for the listening sessions?
Both, because of the comment that was just made that the groups that were invited were then encouraged to tell their groups, their members to access the survey. So I'm just wondering if that sort of could have made the numbers not balanced. I'll give you one of the examples that I'm thinking about. I'm surprised that lack of transportation didn't show up as a barrier at all to the parks, and that parking did. Not that parking might not be a challenge, but that it appears to me we probably talk to more people who have cars than people who don't have cars. Otherwise, I just don't understand why that didn't show up at all, because that is an issue. And I'm thinking maybe we just didn't find people in our survey who are carless. Do you know what I mean? I'm just, some of the numbers to me look like they're a little skewed just based on who accessed the survey. And the numbers we're talking about is a very small percentage of the total populations, and both in numbers and community groups that access our parks. So I'll just throw that out there too. I'm not trying to be critical, because I'm very supportive of the fact that we're moving in this direction to gather this information. But the numbers just seem not as inclusive as I'd like to see them be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all great points. And I think that's something that we've already discussed among our team, is that there has been, as we dive into the survey data, a little bit of a disconnect between what we heard in the listening sessions and what's being captured in the survey, which again, to your point, we kind of anticipated the opposite happening, that folks that were represented, in the listening sessions, if we are utilizing them to send out the survey to their groups and their constituencies, that those populations would be largely overrepresented in a way, which was kind of the intention, because we're really, with this survey, trying to get a more depth of knowledge as it pertains to these populations that have been previously underrepresented in other survey efforts. However, perhaps it is because folks had already participated in the listening sessions. I mean, there's a lot of variables that we could take into consideration, but that didn't happen. And so instead, we are seeing numbers that, like you're saying, perhaps don't seem to align. So because the issue of public transportation didn't come up as a top issue or barrier for individuals, that is reflective of the fact that whoever we surveyed, they have access to a vehicle, perhaps. And so I think, again, this goes back to looking at what we heard through the listening sessions and holding that as key data as well, and not doing necessarily like a numbers thing where it's like, well, okay, listening sessions were smaller, those issues are not as prevalent as like the 3,300 survey respondents, because they were different data collection measures, and so we were reaching different people. So I definitely think some of the limitations of this are important to note and to keep in mind for future efforts, and all of this will absolutely be captured in our report and paired with some additional recommendations moving forward. But as Lisa mentioned, this is showing progress in the right direction. So we are optimistic that we'll continue to be able to reach some of these populations and expand some of the, whether it's through the survey or other measures, expand the responses that we're able to capture.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to let you know that I very much do appreciate our partnership with you and the work that you are doing, and our beginning steps to collecting more and more information so we can make sure that we're serving all of our communities. And I look forward to additional information. And also, don't take this personally because I ask this whenever this sort of situation happens. It would really be helpful to have slides in advance of a meeting so we have a chance to really analyze them and be ready to ask you questions. So next time we have a report, I'm hoping we can get the slides. Were the slides available before the meeting today?
Director Corbett, I will work with the clerk's office for the future.
Okay, but were the slides done before the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
And if you all can just go ahead and send them out after the fact too, I think that would be
Yes.
helpful.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the board? I just wanted to say thank you very much. This is a great survey. Definitely a step in the right direction. My question is a kind of a follow-up to Director Corbett is when you're doing, especially around safety, can the demographics of those questions be broken out? Like, you know, male, female, and gender, and then also demographics as to which ones feel safe versus not?
Yeah, absolutely. And we think that that's going to be a really critical piece of this analysis, is looking at the breakdown of how folks responded based on their demographics. And so our final report will include some of these like cross tabulations, essentially, of looking at responses based on age, race and ethnicity, and gender.
Great. Then also, as far as transportation, was there a question that asked how many lived within, say, a mile versus 5 miles or versus 10 miles from the nearest regional park? Was that one of the questions?
We did not include that question. We did collect zip code data, which I know, that gives us some extent an idea of the geographic representation. And so that will also be captured in our final report, but we didn't have an explicit question about the distance that they live from the park.
Because I think there could be a lot of people that don't have a problem with transportation because they can walk to the nearest park. And they could be carless and still be within very reasonable range. So that'd be something to look into in the future. But good work. I really appreciate it. And this is my second time around, so I got even more out of it today. So thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Well done. Again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Okay, that brings us to board and staff reports. Actions taken by other jurisdictions affecting the Park District. Oops, I see Director Blaine's hand.
I'm just wondering if we could hear from Brian Holt under this item. Because I had a question about the Quarry Lakes Parkway.
Okay.
And he had an answer which might be of interest to the board.
Great.
You want to, good afternoon, Brian Holt, Chief of Planning, Trails, and GIS. And just so I can be clear on your question, Director Lang, do you want to ask that again, just for the benefit of the group?
Well, I was reading in the paper about Union City and its effort to have the success in having the Quarry Lake Parkway.
Correct.
Is that what they called it? And
that's what they call it. Yeah.
So I looked at it and I thought, well, how close is that to the lake? And Brian and planning have been following it, and I thought it would be interesting for the board to see his map in here.
Yeah, great. And do I have a map open? I apologize. I should have been anticipating that. So Quarry Lakes Parkway has been in the news. I think you may have seen Caltrans is currently considering selling or giving the property to Union City. And this has been a project that's been around probably for 2 decades. At one point, it was referred to as the Highway 84 Expressway that was going through an area, and it has since come back, not as a Caltrans project, but as a Union City Fremont Partnership Project. And it seeks to connect Mission Boulevard down to 880 eventually. So I can share my screen real quick here. I apologize, I just brought up an email that sent. So this is the area here, if you're able to see the map. Quarry Lakes is here. There is a Isherwood Way borders Quarry Lakes Parkway. There's an intervening neighborhood, and this distance between our entrance at Quarry Lakes to the planned alignment is it's over 700 feet or so. So it's a good distance away and not directly adjacent, and certainly is within the urban footprint of the city of Union City. We have had an outreach from the city of Union City, city of Fremont, and Alameda County Transportation Authority. And in the interest of full transparency, we have submitted letters in support of some of their grant applications in the past. We have also heard from neighbors who are concerned about this project, and we have evaluated it for either for its potential as future parkland and also the potential for the project to impact Quarry Lakes. And staff is of the opinion that will not directly impact Quarry Lakes and also provide some opportunities for some regional trail benefits that I know continue to be discussed.
So do you know why they named it Quarry Lakes Parkway? You know, when it's a distance from Quarry Lakes. They just like the name here.
It does sound nice. So I think that is the basis of it. And it is near Quarry Lakes, but not directly adjacent to it. But it does have a nicer ring to it than the Highway 84.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions. If any directors have any questions on this project, I imagine you may be hearing from others. Feel free to reach out anytime, and I'm happy to discuss it.
Great. Back to item
I
A.
also had a question about fires. Is this a place where, you know, Chief said they'd be happy to answer it, but I don't know where it belonged.
Works for us. I think Chief Tiley, I don't know if you are on the line here.
I see her.
I am, but I have contractors in my home putting in air conditioning, so I'm going to move that side really quickly. And if you could please restate the question, I would really appreciate it.
Well, I just wanted to know about, you know, because after particularly this weekend and all the fireworks and things, so I read the newspapers and they never mention the Park District's involvement in putting out fires. And I just wondered how active the fire department was in this period around July 4th.
We were very active. In fact, we were part of a task force for Contra Costa County. And I made the decision to let our resources be a part of that because anytime there's a fire in any one of our parks, they're going to be coming anyway. So our engine would be, we're loaning out our engine as a resource, but it's coming back to us. So we had Fire Station 1, which is of course the Tilden Station, and then Fire Station 10, which is Lake Chabot, as well as Station 5, all staffed. We also had the fuels crew working, which is a task, or I'm sorry, is a force multiplier. So in other words, on the Kirker Pass fire, having a crew up there quickly really helped, along with our Type 3, one of our captains, and I believe Eagle was in the area as well, dropping water. So we had all of our resources on board. It was a planned event. So we had an incident action plan that went out not only to our PD brothers and sisters, but also to the other fire departments. So we shared what everybody's resources were going to be. In other words, not just the Park District, but Contra Costa County, Alameda County, and all of the fire jurisdictions that bump up against us. We all communicated and let everybody know how many resources we were going to have and be able to distribute. So we then had 3 fires that were directly on Park District land. That was the Kirker Pass fire, which is actually started by a vehicle and spread onto our property. We had a fire at Miller Knox, and then we also had a fire late at night at Point Pinole. So those were the 3 fires that we had on district land. There was also a fire at Contra Loma, but it was actually not on our property. It was on CCWD's. But we were very active, but we planned for it, we staffed up for it, and we were able to handle it.
Thank you. Thanks, Eileen.
Good job. And then back to the general manager.
Thank you, President Rosario. I just have one update that's in the packet there on actions taken by other jurisdictions. And that is on June 21st, the Alameda County Planning Commission approved a reclamation plan amendment for the Elliott Quarry. Just to remind you, the quarry is located on approximately 920 acres between the cities of Pleasanton and Livermore, but adjacent to our Shadow Cliffs Regional Rec area. The details of that amendment are in the staff report, but just wanted to let you know that the district is going to continue to work with the county and the property owner to advance our regional trail connection at this. Than that, no further updates.
Great, thank you. That brings us to item number 5, board committee reports. Any additions to the finance committee from 5/28/21?
Very full meetings.
Yes. And then executive committee, nothing else to report from there. Any announcements from closed session?
President Rosario, there are no announcements.
Thank you. And now our favorite part of the, oh, you know what? I forgot to, we forgot to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
We did, didn't we?
Better late than never.
Next time.
How did I do that?
It's up to you, President Rosario.
Okay, but we did forget. I do want to, because Colin was ready for his tribal acknowledgement.
Oh, okay.
That would be appropriate to do it now.
You want me to do that? Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. I'm pulling it up here. So this afternoon, I want to acknowledge that much of our parkland extending east of Mount Diablo along the Marsh Creek corridor, bordered by the Las Vaqueras Reservoir and Black Diamond Mines, occupies the unceded tribal homeland of the Volvan Bay Miwok peoples. This recognition is important to our district as the stewards of our parklands. We highly value the history and culture of our indigenous communities and what they teach us as we manage these lands. So by way of the parklands of Clayton Ranch, Deer Valley, Black Diamond Mines, Round Valley, and Morgan Territory, welcome to Volvan Bay Miwok Territory. Thank you, President Rosario.
Thank you. Very well done. So I'll just go over. Forgot, I muted myself. Thank you. Very well done. And then, so board reports, we'll start with Director Lane, then Director Wieskamp, then Director Coffey.
Okay, thank you. The meetings I went to since the last board meeting included finance. I went to the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference meeting in which East Bay EDA did a economic report, which was very interesting. Then we had a liaison meeting with Contra Costa County and the Park District, which is always good. And then I think we had the evaluation for Sabrina after that last meeting. So those were several important meetings as a board member. Other things that happen is I did have a chance to go to an event in which Sherman Lewis celebrated his book, his new book on Ridgelands with an exclamation point, and had a chance to talk to a number of people who'd been involved in several initiatives and much activity surrounding saving Pleasanton Ridge. Our general manager and I went to Castle Rock, Diablo Foothills, and enjoyed sitting in the shade of one of the picnic areas there. So I was very glad that she came out with us to look at it. I took a small Briones hike. I'm trying to hike more, and talked with Tom Leatherman and Brian and Christina and Lisa a little bit about Thurgood Marshall and the visitor center and how we're pursuing that, which was very helpful to me. I appreciate having those meetings and conversations. And I'm looking forward to the Port Chicago Memorial event on July 17th. I am wondering about the status of the Bay Trail section from Garin to Niles Canyon. And, we keep hearing that mountain bike riders want to help us build and maintain. And so I would like to say that once we have permits or whatever it is we do need to complete that section of the trail, that we take the mountain bikers up on it. I know the Bay Trail organization is talking about having a celebration of 400 miles completed or nearly completed, and doing it adjacent to that trail. So it's been elevated to another point in terms of discussion, and I think all of us are ready to see that happen. I appreciated getting the Bay Nature magazine with the 2 fire articles that focused on the Park District. And I saw Sarah Barth, who's Eric Feeler's wife, on Doug McConnell's program talking about the redwoods. So it's, it is enjoyable to look at Doug McConnell and know people who are getting interviewed there and see how well they do. So I thought Sarah did very well as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Wieskamp.
I think she's picked one of the hardest pre-trails for those mountain bikers to work on, but I think that's a fantastic idea. Good thinking, Beverly. I attended the special board meeting on the 17th, the legislative committee on the 18th. And I was at the same event with Sherman Lewis and his book, Ridgeland. It was, the book is interesting to me, and I'm going to get a copy to give to the library because a Livermore citizen, Margaret Tracy, I don't know how many of you heard of her or knew her, was very involved in saving the Pleasanton Ridge project. It was, if you didn't know Margaret, she was a tough cookie. And she was very helpful to Sherman and many others who worked on that. I attended the State of the City of Livermore, of course, by Zoom, with our mayor presenting. And I had the opportunity to talk to and give a few mementos to Laura Mercier, who has been executive director of the Tri-Valley Conservancy and has been very successful in helping them acquire land. And if you didn't know it, she also helped start a program bringing youth into the area, trying to make them appreciate the fact that the agriculture, whether it's olive trees or vines or pistachios, it's very important to the whole area in the future to them. And that has been a great program. I talked to the PAC last week, and They got a chance to see some of the amenities that we now have at Del Val. And I think, well, you were there, Dee, for the opening.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's a fantastic job that our staff did, all by Zoom. I can't even imagine how they did it, but if you haven't been there, you need to go there. Attended operations. And then on the 4th of July, I went out with Captain Love, and you would not believe how quiet Del Val was. I mean, there were hundreds, maybe a couple of thousand there, but compared to the usual, it was quiet. People were in picnic areas. There was no huge crowds or anything. And then we went to Shadow Cliffs, and basically there were some small picnic groups, people having a good time, and a few fisher folk. And that was it. That was the 4th of July. What of course, there was no swimming at all at Shadow Cliffs. But people seemed to be enjoying it. It was a different experience. That's all I can tell you. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Then Director Coffey, then Director Waspy, then Director Eccles.
Yeah, I was surprised at how relatively unbusy parks were this weekend. My own sense of it, Anne, is that people have been spending a lot of time in the parks.
They did something different, huh?
And now that they don't have to, that maybe people are exploring some other stuff that they can now do other than, and I think, so the volumes will probably come back because
I'm sure.
enjoy it, but
all those people were in airports going across the country.
A lot of that, and a lot of just going up in the mountains, maybe. And, hotels. The beach, right. Had a busy Zoom month in June. Attended the Contra Costa Liaison Committee, as Director Lane mentioned. It went very well. Attended the special board session on the GM's evaluation process, focusing on process. June 18th, I listened in on our Ledge Committee, as I frequently try to do. On the 19th, I attended a really wonderful Juneteenth celebration by Zoom called Fighting for Freedom, and it was hosted jointly by the National Park Service and their local rangers and our Park District naturalists at Black Diamond Mines. Focus was on the legacy of Port Chicago, the tragedy and the mutiny, and the history of Thurgood Marshall Regional Park. It went very well. On the 21st, I met with the Point Melati Working Group, which is organized by Citizens for East Shore Parks. And the focus there is on opportunities that may be new involving Point Melati. On the 22nd, I attended the Enviro Labor Group meeting, a group that meets every 2 months and is organized by Save Monte Diablo and the Contra Costa Building Trades. 22nd, I attended a web forum hosted by the Greenbelt Alliance with experts on wildfire protection and preparedness in Northern California generally. Its focus was on a report just published last month by the Greenbelt Alliance entitled Critical Role of Greenbelts in Wildfire Resilience. On the 24th, Citizens for East Shore Parks and the Sierra Club hosted a tour of Point Melati for our new general manager, and I attended along with Director Eccles. On the 24th, I had a meeting with the leadership of 2428 to talk about current issues. On the 25th, I looked in on our Finance Committee meeting via YouTube. On the 26th, I did a walk and talk with a Pinole Hercules area hiking group. They wanted to have their periodic hike as a group launch from the new Rodeo extension of the Bay Trail, and asked me to come along and talk about that project and other Bay Trail projects. I got to attend for the first time on the 29th, the board operations committee as an alternate. So I actually got to participate, and that was a nice experience. On July 1st, that evening, I attended the second public input session on the Roddy Ranch Phase 1 opening. It was well attended, and our planners handled the meeting very well. And my favorite thing of the last year and was it 3 or 4 months that I've been deprived of, I alleviated on July 4th by attending the Hercules July 4th celebration along with Mila as a park ambassador, handling the information booth. And boy, were a lot of people happy with the park district. It was very, very nice to experience that again after being away from it for so long. And over the last several weekends, recent weekends, Mila and I have been hiking for a specific purpose. We've went out to Joaquin Miller Park in Oakland, next to Redwood. We went over to Novato this past weekend to hike the new Ponte Ridge trail that the County of Marin developed by converting a fire road into more sections of single track dirt trail. And then also we hiked around China Camp over in Marin, all of which of course are touted as having developed single track trails for multi-uses. And I found myself taking note of where I felt comfortable as a hiker, where I didn't feel comfortable as a hiker. Actually measured using the phone measuring device the widths of these single track trails, and getting a feel for at what point do I feel comfortable and width and all that. So it was a really good deliberate hiking regimen that Mila and I have been undertaking in order to get a well-informed view of those kind of trails and the impact of the mountain bikes. So I'll finish there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Very busy day, month.
Yeah, good. I enjoyed it.
Director Waspy.
Thank you. So to follow up on Director Lane and Director Wieskamp's talk about the event we had for Sherman Lewis on June 17th, one of those mountain bikers that was one of the founding members of the Bay Area Ridge Trail, and also he was a bicycle representative there, Glenn Kirby, asked me if we could take a hike from Stonebrae up on Walpert Ridge on the along the Bay Ridge Trail, and then I think we might have done some trespassing. I'm not sure. Across the Calderwood property.
Oh my goodness, confessions.
And then we bushwhacked our way, and bushwhacking was a euphemistic term for what we were doing, to make our way down to the Chenard Vineyard. But it is a wonderful east-west corridor. It's lusted after by many cyclists because it is a east-west corridor. It'll get you to the Holy Grail. If you live in Hayward, you can now ride up to Stonebrae, go through Guerin, Walpert Ridge, the Bay Ridge Trail, and then hopefully we'll have a trail down to the Chenard Vineyard and a crosswalk across Palmaris Road, and then you'll have total access to that wonderful Pleasanton Ridge. So we did that hike, and I didn't get too much poison oak, but it was a lot of fun. On June 18th, General Manager Landreth and I had our one-on-one, and we visited Mission Peak and Vargas Plateau, talked about some of the issues down there. On the 18th, I attended the legislative committee meeting, and on the 19th, we did the Sherman Lewis event at aforementioned Sherman Lewis event at Chenard Vineyard. It was really great. Some of the real old pioneers and some of the real great environmentalists from Southern Alameda County and over on the Pleasanton side were all there, kind of telling old stories. There were a couple of former Regional Parks Board members. It was a great, great celebration in a wonderful, wonderful place. I hope someday we can have a board field trip out to the Chenard Vineyard because it has lots and lots of potential. And it's a really key purchase, and then be a great link in the east-west corridors. On the 22nd, I went to the Hayward Shoreline and had a briefing with the general manager, Matt Grawl, Chris Barton, talking about some of the stuff going on at Hayward Shoreline. A lot of changes down there, a lot of plans. And then one thing I'll mention is I had the opportunity to see my old buddy, Mark Taylor, who I think's been here 41 years, I think he said. And God, he must have started when he was 11 years old. But he's a gem. He's one of those classics that, you know, started work somewhere as a temporary, but he got on permanent at Hayward Shoreline 35 to 40 years ago and hasn't left. And he knows more about that place than anybody. And any government agency, the Fish and Wildlife Service, BCDC, he knows more than anybody. And unfortunately, he's going to be gone. You know, as much as he loves the place, he will be leaving. So if you get a chance, go see Mark Taylor. He's a wealth of knowledge. On the 23rd through the 26th, I had the opportunity to go to the California Association of Recreation Park Districts Conference in Monterey. It was a great event, especially for me, who I'm dying being pent up. It was an in-person conference. We had a little over 100 attendees. A little awkward at first, and then everybody, we were all park and recreation people. We fell into it. It was great being in person. Lots of great sessions, lots of real educational stuff with our own Tim Seifert from NBS. I always like to plug Tim, who does our CFDs and does lots of our finance stuff for us and finance districts. Did a great presentation, and always uses the Park District as a great example of a great work by great agencies together. We also received an award. Doesn't look good on Zoom, and I don't know if you can even see it, but we received an Innovation Award for the Interpretive Services folks digital learning program. So that was recognized, and everybody was pretty amazed at the great work the Interpretive Services Department has done during COVID. On July 4th, I had the great opportunity to visit some parks with Chief Chiaburo and General Manager Landreth. We drove around and went to Lake Chabot, Tilden, Roberts, and Don Castro, and met a lot of really nice people. You're right, we didn't focus too much on the fact that there weren't that many people. We visited parks, saw lots of people doing lots of great work, saw firefighters, park rangers, police officers, you know, providing a safe, healthful 4th of July for everybody involved. And that's it for me. I guess I would please note, if you haven't seen your latest issue of Bay Nature, there's a great article on featuring Eileen Tiley and the fuels management crew. Great article, great photos, great deal. So that's it. Thank you.
Great. Director Eccles.
Hi. So on the 16th, I met with staff regarding Fuel Lake and the ongoing study project to look at various alternatives and to keep the lake alive, hopefully. And then on the 17th, met with the Contra Costa Liaison Committee on the 17th as well. I, along with all of the other board members, met with our general manager on her goals and objectives for the year. On the 21st, I met with a constituent regarding some maintenance issues along Clark Road and El Sobrante. On the 21st as well, met with the Point Malati Working Group along with Director Coffey and a number of other stakeholders. On the 22nd, I met with one of my constituents regarding safety issues at Albany Beach. On the 23rd, attended the Brown Armstrong Finance Committee in preparation for the audit review. On the 23rd, met with GM Landreth at the Tilden Nature area, and we had an opportunity to walk around Jewel Lake and some of the trails nearby and had a good meeting there. On the 24th, also attended the Point Malate tour with our general manager and a number of, and of course, Director Coffey, as you heard, and a number of groups, including Point Malate Alliance, the Sierra Club, Citizens for East Shore Parks, California Native Plant Society, and a number of our other staff in addition to our general manager. And then on the 25th, attended the board finance committee. And then for the last week of the month, went on vacation with my daughter up in the mountains for a week, and it was fabulous.
Great. Well, sounds like you're getting into the swing of things. And I'm glad you got an opportunity to get a vacation. Thank you very much. And then let's see, for myself, on the 17th, I attended the our closed session for the general manager's objectives. Wonderful, great meeting, and I just love that. I love the I love having a moderator there. I think it makes for a good discussion for the board. And then on the 18th, I attended the legislative meeting, and then again on the 18th in the evening, I met with AFSCME 2428. And then on the 21st, I had my diversity, equity, and inclusion interview with BTC. And then on the 22nd, I had lunch with my appointees from the PAC. We met at Calvera there in Oakland, and we had the pleasure to run into Rue Mapp from Afro Outdoors, and she was very, very, very thankful for the Park District and our Juneteenth events, and she said she's working on getting all the or downloading all the responses to their event. And then on the 29th, I attended the Oakland Chamber of Commerce Annual Awards. That was very well done. Some of the winners were Comcast, who donated $100,000 to Oakland schools, plus 1,000 laptop computers. They recognized the Alameda County Food Bank and the College of Holy Names for their creation of the Black Culture Zone. And then we heard from Senator Padilla. It's the first time I ever actually heard him speak. Very well done. I think our Senate's in good hands. And then there was a wonderful tribute by Councilmember Treva Reed for Tom Guarino. It was very, very heartfelt and well received. So, and then, so I was glad I got to go to that event. And then I had a constituent meeting or a phone call, and I just wanted to give a shout out to public safety and the lifeguards, Pete DeQuincy and Kylie Maxwell, for responding to my constituent about swimming at Roberts. So very well done and very responsive. Thank you very much. And then on 6:30, I attended Alameda County American Asian Pacific Islander.
Pacific Islander.
It's kind of an informal electeds from Alameda County. It's hosted by Fong La, and we got to hear and talk with Betty Yee. And it's a great, we meet once a month, and it's turning out to be a great thing. And then on the 7/1, I attended the Contra Costa Mayors Conference. Bev, I didn't see you there, but obviously you were there. EDA had a great presentation of the future growth of the East Bay. And then also I just wanted to put in a plug for the Bay Area Air Quality Management District has lots of money for grants for charging stations. So we should really take advantage of those. And then on 7/3, I had the privilege and to attend the memorial service for our dearly departed officer, Jack Pelletier, retiree. It was like a homecoming. There's a picture on Facebook. Lots of familiar faces of all these retired officers. pretty amazing. It was a great event. Lots of good memories and lots of laughs. If anybody, Dennis, you remember Jack? He was incredibly. But so I had that, and then I think that's it for me. Looking, Director Wieskamp,
I forgot because it was the last minute. I was an alternate in finance. Literally, I had talked to her earlier and she said, oh, well, we'll see you sometime. And then an hour, no, I don't even think it was that long. They called and said, can you come to finance? So add that one on my list, but I was glad I was there. It was always a great presentation. I enjoy finance.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much for doing that. Any other comments or questions from the board? So before we go, I'd like to acknowledge one of our former retirees, Pat Still, who passed away. Then also, again, Officer Jack Pelletier, really incredible people. They did a lot of work for the Park District, and yeah, they'll be missed. So thank you all very much. And yeah, we made it. We made it to the meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dee.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.